My name is Margaret Collins. I'm 58 years old, and I live in Portland, Oregon. At my husband's funeral, my daughter, Anna, hugged me and whispered in my ear, "You're the one who should be in that coffin." Everyone thought it was the pain talking, but I knew it wasn't. Because 3 days earlier, my husband, David Collins, had handed me an envelope and said, "If I die, open this." The rain fell mercilessly on that October morning, as if the sky itself was mourning David's departure. The cemetery was packed with people who had known my husband for his 40-year career as a successful contractor. I stood there, dressed in black, feeling the weight of 35 years of marriage pressing down on my shoulders like a lead blanket. David had built our construction company from nothing. We started in our garage in 1989 with just $15,000 in savings and a dream. Through sweat, sacrifice, and countless 18-hour days, we had built Collins Construction into a multi-million-dollar empire. The company was worth $8.5 million when David passed, and our personal assets totaled another $3.2 million. But as I watched the mahogany casket being lowered into the ground, all I could think about was that envelope hidden in my bedroom drawer. David's hands had trembled when he gave it to me just 3 days before his massive heart attack. His eyes held a sadness I had never seen before, a weight that seemed to crush his spirit. "Margaret," he had said, his voice barely above a whisper, "there are things you need to know, things I should have told you years ago. If something happens to me—" He paused, his breathing labored. "Promise me you'll read this only after I'm gone." Anna stood beside me at the graveside, her designer black dress immaculate, her blonde hair perfectly styled despite the rain. At 32, she had grown into a beautiful woman, but there was something cold in her blue eyes that reminded me more of winter frost than summer sky. Her husband, Richard, stood slightly behind her, his expensive suit and perfectly manicured appearance a stark contrast to the genuine grief I was feeling. When the service ended and people began to approach me with their condolences, Anna took my arm with what appeared to be loving support. But as she leaned in close, her grip tightened painfully, and those venomous words slipped from her lips like poison. "You're the one who should be in that coffin." The shock hit me like a physical blow. I stumbled slightly, and Anna immediately switched back to her performance of the grieving daughter, steadying me as if she were my devoted protector. "Mom's just overwhelmed," she announced to the concerned faces around us. "It's been such a difficult time." But I saw the flash of satisfaction in her eyes, the cruel smile that played at the corners of her mouth for just a split second. This wasn't grief talking. This was something far more sinister, something that had been brewing beneath the surface of our family for years. That night, alone in the house that David and I had built together, I sat staring at the envelope. My hands shook as I remembered Anna's words, the coldness in her voice, the calculated cruelty of choosing that moment to deliver such a devastating blow. What secrets was David hiding? What had he discovered that made him fear for what would happen after his death? The envelope felt heavy in my hands, heavier than paper should ever feel. Written on the front in David's careful handwriting were the words, "For Margaret, the truth about our family." Inside, I could feel what seemed like documents, photographs, and a letter. My heart pounded as I realized that whatever was in this envelope was going to change everything I thought I knew about my life, my marriage, and most terrifyingly, my daughter. As I sit here now, preparing to break the seal that David placed on this envelope, I want you to know that what I'm about to share with you is a story of betrayal so deep, so shocking, that it will make you question everything you think you know about family loyalty. If you're ready to hear the truth about what happened in the Collins family, please hit that like button, subscribe to this channel, and leave a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is there. Because this story is just beginning, and you won't believe where it goes. With trembling fingers, I tore open the envelope that had haunted my thoughts since David's funeral. The contents spilled onto my kitchen table like pieces of a nightmare I wasn't prepared to face. There were bank statements, legal documents, photographs, and a letter written in David's familiar handwriting. But what I saw made my blood run cold. The letter began, "My dearest Margaret, if you're reading this, then I'm gone, and the vultures are probably already circling. I discovered something 3 months ago that broke my heart, but I couldn't bring myself to tell you while I was alive. Our daughter Anna, the child we raised with such love and sacrifice, has been stealing from our company for the past 2 years. My hands shook so violently I could barely continue reading. The documents showed a trail of financial manipulation that was breathtaking in its scope and cruelty. Anna had been forging my signature on company checks, creating fake invoices for non-existent subcontractors, and siphoning money through a web of shell companies that led directly to accounts she controlled with Richard. The total amount stolen was staggering, $847,000 over 24 months. Money that David and I had worked our entire lives to build, money that represented decades of sacrifice, early mornings, and missed family dinners. Anna had taken it all while looking us in the eye and calling us Mom and Dad. But the photographs were what truly shattered my world. They showed Anna and Richard at luxury resorts in Hawaii and Europe, wearing expensive jewelry, driving cars that cost more than most people's houses. There was Anna, my baby girl, laughing on a yacht in the Mediterranean, while David and I worked 16-hour days to keep our business afloat during the construction downturn of 2023. The most damning photograph showed Anna signing documents in a lawyer's office. According to David's notes, she had been meeting with attorneys for months, preparing to contest his will and claim that he was mentally incompetent. She had been planning to have him declared unfit to run the company so she could seize control of everything we had built. David's letter continued. I hired a private investigator, Margaret. What I discovered broke what was left of my heart. Anna has been telling people for months that you're becoming senile, that you can't be trusted with financial decisions. She's been laying the groundwork to have you declared incompetent too, so she can take control of everything. I remembered the strange conversations over the past year, how Anna would visit and make comments about my memory, how she would correct things I had said or suggest that I was confused about dates or events. I had attributed it to normal aging, but now I realized it was a calculated campaign to undermine my credibility. The bank statements revealed the true scope of the betrayal. Anna had not only stolen from the business, but had also been accessing accounts that David and I had set up for our retirement. She had somehow gained access to our emergency fund, the $235,000 we had saved over 20 years for medical expenses and security in our old age. Half of it was gone. There were copies of emails between Anna and Richard discussing their plans. In one particularly chilling exchange, Anna had written, "Once the old man is out of the picture, dealing with Mom will be easy. Everyone knows she's getting forgetful. A few more months of documentation about her decline, and we'll have conservatorship locked up." Richard had responded, "The lawyer says we need to be careful about the timing. Too soon after David's death will look suspicious. But if we can establish a pattern of incompetence, the courts will have no choice but to protect her from herself." They had been planning this for months, maybe years. Every family dinner, every holiday celebration, every moment of seeming love and affection had been a lie, a performance designed to position themselves for the ultimate theft of everything David and I had worked for. The final document in the envelope was a new will that David had secretly drafted just 2 weeks before his death. In it, he had removed Anna as the primary beneficiary and instead left everything to me with specific instructions that none of it should go to Anna unless she made full restitution for what she had stolen. But there was more. David had included a letter of instruction for me. "Margaret, I've already spoken to our attorney, James Morrison. He has copies of all this evidence. If Anna tries to contest the will or have you declared incompetent, he knows what to do. But be careful, my love. Our daughter has become someone we don't recognize, and I fear what she might do when she realizes her plans have failed." As I sat in the darkness of my kitchen, surrounded by the evidence of my daughter's betrayal, I felt something shift inside me. The grief and shock were still there, but underneath them, a cold fury was beginning to build. Anna thought she could manipulate me, steal from me, and ultimately destroy me to get what she wanted. She had no idea that her father had seen through her lies, or that he had taken steps to protect everything we had built together. Anna was about to discover that the mother she thought was becoming a confused old woman was actually a force to be reckoned with, and the war she had started was about to become very real. 3 days after discovering the contents of David's envelope, I sat across from James Morrison, our family attorney for the past 15 years. His mahogany desk was covered with the evidence of Anna's betrayal, and his usually calm demeanor showed cracks of genuine anger as he reviewed the documents. "Margaret, what your daughter has done goes far beyond simple theft," James said, his voice tight with controlled fury. "This is a systematic fraud operation that could result in federal charges. The fact that she's been planning to have both you and David declared incompetent while simultaneously stealing from you. It's one of the most calculated cases of financial elder abuse I've ever seen. The amount of David's new will hit me again as James read the specifics. Everything. The house worth $1.2 million, the business valued at $8.5 million, our savings and investments totaling $3.2 million. All of it was left to me with ironclad protections that Anna couldn't break. But more importantly, David had included a clause that would become my weapon. If Anna challenged the will or made any attempt to claim incompetence on my part, she would forfeit any right to inheritance permanently. Your husband was brilliant, James continued. He documented everything and made sure that any aggressive move Anna makes will only strengthen your position. But Margaret, we need to be prepared. Based on these emails, Anna's planning to make her move soon. I didn't have to wait long. That very afternoon, Anna arrived at my house with Richard and two people I didn't recognize. A woman with a briefcase who introduced herself as Dr. Sandra Phillips, a geriatric psychiatrist, and a man named Kevin Walsh who claimed to be a social worker specializing in elder care. Anna's performance was Oscar-worthy. She rushed to embrace me with tears in her eyes, her voice breaking as she spoke. "Mom, I'm so worried about you. Since Dad died, you've seemed so confused, so lost. Richard and I have been discussing it, and we think you need help." "What kind of help?" I asked, keeping my voice steady despite the rage building inside me. Dr. Phillips stepped forward with a practiced smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Mrs. Collins, your daughter has expressed concerns about your cognitive function, some memory issues, confusion about financial matters, difficulty managing daily tasks. These are common after the loss of a spouse, but we want to make sure you're getting the support you need." I watched Anna's face carefully as the doctor spoke. There was no genuine concern there, only cold calculation. This was her first strike, exactly as David had predicted. She was trying to establish the foundation for having me declared incompetent. "I appreciate your concern," I said calmly, "but I feel perfectly capable of managing my affairs." Richard stepped forward then, his voice dripping with false sympathy. "Margaret, we know this is difficult, but Anna showed us some concerning things. You wrote a check for the electric bill twice last month, and when Anna called you yesterday, you seemed confused about what day it was." The lies rolled off his tongue so smoothly that I almost admired the performance. Anna had coached him well, but I had prepared for this moment during my meeting with James, and I was ready. "That's interesting, Richard," I said, my voice taking on a steel edge that made him step back slightly. "Because according to my bank records, which I reviewed this morning with my attorney, there was only one electric bill payment last month. And as for yesterday's phone call, I wasn't confused about the day. I was simply surprised that Anna was calling me at all, since she hasn't shown any real interest in my well-being since the funeral." Anna's mask slipped for just a moment, and I saw the flash of panic in her eyes. She recovered quickly, but not quickly enough. "Mom, you're being defensive," she said, her voice taking on a patronizing tone. "Dr. Phillips just wants to do a simple evaluation to make sure you're okay." "What I'm being is careful," I replied. "And since you seem so concerned about my mental state, perhaps you'd like to explain why $847,000 is missing from our company accounts." The silence that followed was deafening. Anna's face went white, Richard's mouth fell open, and Dr. Phillips looked confused. The social worker suddenly seemed very interested in examining his shoes. "What are you talking about?" Anna stammered, but her voice had lost all its earlier confidence. I stood up slowly, feeling every bit of my 58 years, but also feeling stronger than I had in months. "I'm talking about the theft that your father discovered before he died. I'm talking about the forged signatures, the fake invoices, and the shell companies you and Richard created to funnel money from our business into your personal accounts." Anna's face twisted with an ugly expression I had never seen before. "You can't prove anything," she snarled, all pretense of loving concern gone. "And even if you could, Dad's dead. You're just a confused old woman who doesn't understand business." "Actually," I said, pulling out my phone and showing her the screen, "your father documented everything, and James Morrison, our attorney, has been recording this entire conversation." The blood drained from Anna's face as she realized what I had just revealed. James's voice came clearly through the phone speaker. "This is James Morrison, attorney for Margaret Collins. I can confirm that Mrs. Collins is acting with full mental capacity, and that we have substantial evidence of financial fraud committed by Anna Collins and Richard Walsh. Dr. Phillips and the social worker were already heading for the door, clearly wanting no part of what was about to unfold. But Anna wasn't finished. Her voice rose to a shriek that echoed through the house. "This is my inheritance. You can't keep what's rightfully mine." "Watch me," I said quietly. And for the first time since David's death, I smiled. The next morning brought Anna's counterattack, and it was more vicious than I had anticipated. I woke to find reporters camped outside my house and my phone ringing incessantly. Anna had gone to the local news media with a heartbreaking story about an elderly, grief-stricken widow who was being manipulated by an unscrupulous attorney into cutting her loving daughter out of her inheritance. Channel 8 News ran a segment titled "Elder Abuse or Family Greed," featuring Anna in tears outside the courthouse, clutching Richard's hand as she spoke about her desperate fight to protect her vulnerable mother from predatory legal practices. She was brilliant, I had to admit. Her performance was flawless, the picture of a devoted daughter whose world had been shattered by loss and betrayal. "My mother isn't thinking clearly," Anna sobbed into the camera. "She's been isolated and filled with paranoid delusions about me stealing money. I've tried to get her professional help, but this lawyer has convinced her that everyone is out to get her. I just want my mom back." The reporter, a young woman who clearly bought Anna's story completely, nodded sympathetically. "And you're saying that James Morrison, a respected attorney in this community, is taking advantage of your mother's grief?" "I don't want to make accusations," Anna replied, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. "But when someone charges $50,000 in legal fees in just 1 week to an elderly widow, you have to ask questions." I turned off the television, my hands shaking with rage. Anna had twisted everything, made herself the victim and me the villain. But she had also made a crucial mistake. She had lied about James's fees, and that lie was going to cost her dearly. My phone buzzed with a text from James. "Emergency meeting, my office, 1 hour. Bring the flash drive David left." The flash drive. In all the chaos, I had almost forgotten about the small device that had been tucked into the envelope with the other documents. David's note had simply said, "Security footage from the office. You'll need this." At James's office, I found him furious but focused. Anna's media stunt was clever, but she's made several legal mistakes that we can use against her. However, we need to move fast. She's filed for an emergency conservatorship hearing, claiming you're being manipulated and that your assets are at risk. Can she win? I asked. Not with what we have, but first, let's see what's on that flash drive. What we saw made my blood run cold. The security footage from our office showed Anna and Richard systematically going through David's desk and filing cabinets on the night before his funeral. They were clearly searching for something specific, and when Anna found David's safe behind a painting, her expression of triumph was unmistakable. But the most damning footage showed what happened next. Anna pulled out a device that looked like a small scanner and began photographing documents from the safe. She was stealing information at the same time she was planning to play the grieving daughter at the funeral the next day. "This is premeditation," James said grimly. She was already executing her plan while her father's body was still at the funeral home. The footage also showed Richard replacing some documents in the safe with what appeared to be forgeries. They had come prepared with fake papers, probably alternate versions of David's will that would be more favorable to them. "James," I said slowly, "what if we've been thinking about this all wrong? What if Anna didn't just start stealing recently? What if she's been planning this for years?" James leaned back in his chair, his expression thoughtful. "You think the theft was just the beginning?" "I think Anna has been systematically positioning herself to take over everything since David got sick 3 years ago. The memory lapses everyone thought he was having? What if Anna was drugging him?" The words hung in the air like a physical presence. James was quiet for a long moment before speaking. "Margaret, that's a very serious accusation. Do you have any evidence?" I thought about the past 3 years, about how David would sometimes seem confused after family dinners at Anna's house, how he would complain of feeling dizzy or forgetful after their visits. I remembered the prescription bottles that Anna had given us, claiming they were vitamins recommended by her doctor friend. "I saved those vitamin bottles," I said. "David threw most of them away, but I kept a few in case we needed to remember what he was taking." "We need to get those tested immediately," James said. "If Anna was drugging David to make him appear incompetent, that changes everything. It means this wasn't just theft, it was attempted murder." As we sat there planning our next moves, my phone rang. It was Anna, and for the first time since this nightmare began, I was eager to answer. "Hello, Anna," I said calmly. "Mom, we need to talk." Her voice was different now, harder, more desperate. "I know you're angry, but you don't understand what you're doing. That lawyer is filling your head with lies." "The only lies I've heard lately came from your mouth on the evening news," I replied. "I was trying to protect you." Anna's voice rose. "Do you have any idea what people are saying about our family now? About Dad's business? You're destroying everything he built." "No, Anna. You destroyed it when you decided to steal from us. But here's what's going to happen now. You're going to return every penny you took, and you're going to drop this conservatorship nonsense, or I'm going to the police with evidence of fraud, theft, and possibly attempted murder." The silence on the other end was deafening. When Anna finally spoke, her voice was cold and calculated in a way that chilled me to the bone. "You have no idea what you've just started, Mom. Dad protected you from the truth about this family for years, but he's gone now. And you're about to learn exactly what happens to people who get in my way." The line went dead, and I knew that the real war was just beginning. The laboratory results came back on a Tuesday morning that changed everything I thought I knew about my husband's final years. Dr. Sarah Chen, the toxicologist James had recommended, called me personally with results that made my hands shake as I gripped the phone. "Mrs. Collins, the residue we found in those vitamin bottles contains significant traces of scopolamine and low-dose benzodiazepines," she said, her voice grave. "These substances, when combined and administered regularly over time, can cause exactly the symptoms you described: confusion, memory loss, disorientation, and difficulty concentrating." My worst fears were confirmed. Anna had been systematically poisoning her father for years, making him appear incompetent while she positioned herself to take control of everything. The vitamins she had so lovingly brought him were actually a cocktail designed to steal his mind while leaving his body functional enough to sign documents. "Doctor, could these substances have contributed to David's heart attack?" I asked, though I dreaded the answer. "Absolutely. Long-term use of these drugs, especially in an older adult with existing cardiovascular issues, could definitely trigger a cardiac event. Mrs. Collins, if what you're telling me is accurate, your husband may have been murdered slowly over the course of several years." That afternoon, James and I met with Detective Maria Santos from the Portland Police Department's Financial Crimes Unit. Detective Santos was a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s who listened to our story with the kind of focused attention that told me she'd seen similar cases before. "Financial elder abuse cases have tripled in the past 5 years," she said, reviewing our evidence. "But this level of premeditation and the possible poisoning element make this one of the most sophisticated schemes I've encountered. Your daughter spent years setting this up." The detective explained that Anna's plan had been nearly perfect. By making David appear mentally incompetent, she could have gained legal control over his affairs while he was still alive. The theft of company funds was just the beginning. Once she had conservatorship, she could have legally transferred everything to herself. "But she made crucial mistakes," Detective Santos continued. "The security footage showing her breaking into the safe, the documented pattern of the drugging, and most importantly, your husband's foresight in documenting everything before his death. We have enough evidence to file charges." That evening, I received an unexpected visitor. Richard arrived alone, looking haggard and nervous. He kept glancing over his shoulder, as if expecting to be followed. "Margaret, we need to talk," he said, his usual confidence completely gone. "Anna doesn't know I'm here." I let him in, curious to hear what the man who had helped steal nearly $1 million from my family could possibly want to say. "I want to make a deal," he said, without preamble. "I'll testify against Anna and return my share of the money in exchange for immunity." "Your share?" I asked. "How much exactly did you take?" Richard pulled out a folder from his jacket. "Anna and I split everything 50-50. My portion comes to $423,500. I still have most of it. I was too scared to spend it after David started asking questions." The documents he showed me revealed the full scope of their operation. They had created 6 different shell companies, each with its own bank account. Money was moved through these accounts in a complex pattern designed to hide the theft from auditors. Richard had managed the technical side, while Anna handled the emotional manipulation. "She's dangerous, Margaret," Richard said, his voice dropping to a whisper. Anna's not the person you think she is. The way she talked about you and David, it was like you weren't even human to her, just obstacles to be removed. What do you mean removed? I asked, though I was beginning to suspect the answer. Richard was quiet for a long moment before speaking. 6 months ago, Anna started talking about what would happen after David died. She was so certain it would happen soon that I started to wonder, Margaret, I think she was increasing the dosage of those drugs. She wanted him to have a heart attack. The room seemed to spin around me as the full horror of what Anna had done sank in. She hadn't just stolen from us. She had murdered her father as part of a plan to inherit everything. There's something else, Richard continued. Anna's been researching your medical history. She knows about your mother's Alzheimer's diagnosis, and she's been planning to use that to claim you have early-onset dementia. She's already got a doctor who's willing to testify that your behavior shows signs of cognitive decline. My mother had indeed suffered from Alzheimer's, dying after a 7-year battle with the disease. The idea that Anna would use that tragedy to manipulate the legal system was breathtaking in its cruelty. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Because Anna's planning something bigger, Richard said, his hands shaking. She's talking about having you committed to a memory care facility. Once you're declared incompetent and institutionalized, she'll have total control over everything. And Margaret, I don't think she plans for you to live very long in that facility. The weight of what Richard was revealing hit me like a physical blow. Anna wasn't just trying to steal from me. She was planning to have me killed, just as she had killed David. What do you want from me? I asked. Protection, Richard said simply. Anna's dangerous, and she's desperate. When she finds out that I've talked to you, she'll try to eliminate me too. I want to cooperate with the police, return the money, and disappear before she realizes what I've done. As I sat there looking at this man who had helped destroy my family, I realized that he might be my best weapon against Anna. His testimony could provide the proof we needed to put her away forever. You'll need to call Detective Santos, I said. Tonight. And Richard, if you're lying to me, if this is some elaborate scheme you and Anna have cooked up together, I will make sure you both spend the rest of your lives in prison. He nodded, pulling out his phone. I'm ready to talk, but we need to move fast. Anna's court hearing for the conservatorship is in 3 days, and she's confident she's going to win. As Richard made the call to Detective Santos, I felt a cold determination settling over me. Anna thought she had orchestrated the perfect crime, but she was about to discover that her mother was far from the helpless victim she had imagined. Within 48 hours of Richard's confession, Detective Santos had moved with the kind of efficiency that proved she had been waiting for a case like this one. Richard was placed in protective custody after receiving death threats that the police traced back to Anna's phone. His detailed confession, combined with the financial records and security footage, gave us enough evidence to file charges for fraud, theft, and conspiracy. But Detective Santos had a bigger plan in mind. Your daughter thinks she's smarter than everyone else, the detective explained during our strategy meeting. That arrogance is going to be her downfall. We're going to let her walk into the conservatorship, hearing thinking she's going to win, and then we're going to destroy her in court. James had been working around the clock to prepare our counterattack. Margaret, what we're about to do is risky. We're going to let Anna present her case first. Let her perjure herself with lies about your mental state and her concerns for your welfare. Then we're going to reveal everything. The theft, the poisoning, Richard's confession, all of it. The morning of the conservatorship hearing, I dressed carefully in a navy blue suit that David had always said made me look distinguished and powerful. I wanted to look like the competent businesswoman I had been for 40 years, not the confused widow Anna was trying to portray. The courthouse was packed. Anna had clearly tipped off the media because there were cameras everywhere. She arrived with her legal team, 3 expensive attorneys who looked like they could buy and sell small countries. But I noticed something that gave me hope. Anna looked nervous for the first time since this nightmare had begun. Judge Patricia Morrison, no relation to James, was a stern woman in her 60s who had a reputation for having no patience with family manipulation or elder abuse. She listened impassively as Anna's lead attorney, a slick man named Bradley Thorne, began painting a picture of a grieving daughter trying to save her beloved mother from predatory influences. Your Honor, Thorne said, his voice dripping with manufactured sincerity, Anna Collins is here today because she loves her mother and fears for her safety. Since the death of her father, Margaret Collins has exhibited classic signs of dementia: confusion, paranoia, and most troublingly, accusations against her own daughter that have no basis in reality. Anna took the stand and delivered the performance of a lifetime. Tears flowed as she described her desperate attempts to help me cope with David's death. She spoke about my increasingly erratic behavior and my unfounded accusations of theft against her and Richard. "I just want my mother to get the help she needs," Anna sobbed. "She's been convinced by her attorney that everyone is trying to hurt her. She thinks I've stolen money from the family business. But the truth is, she's becoming unable to manage complex financial matters." Thorne presented fabricated evidence of my supposed mental decline, altered emails where I seemed confused, testimony from Anna's paid psychiatrist about my paranoid delusions, and financial records that had been cleverly manipulated to suggest I was making poor decisions. But I noticed that Anna couldn't look me in the eye as she testified. Even as she was trying to destroy me, some part of her knew what she was doing was monstrous. When it was our turn, James stood up with a confidence that made Anna's attorney visibly nervous. "Your Honor, what we've just heard is not the testimony of a loving daughter, but the desperate lies of a woman who has been systematically stealing from and poisoning her elderly parents for years." The gasps from the courtroom gallery were audible as James began presenting our evidence. The bank records showing the shell companies, the security footage of Anna and Richard breaking into David's safe, the laboratory results proving the vitamin bottles contained dangerous drugs. But the moment that changed everything was when Richard was brought in under police protection to testify. Anna's face went white as she realized her partner had betrayed her. "Your Honor," Richard said, his voice shaking but clear, "everything Anna Collins has told this court today is a lie. Margaret Collins is not mentally incompetent. She's the victim of the most sophisticated financial fraud scheme I've ever been part of." Richard's testimony was devastating. He detailed exactly how they had stolen the money, how Anna had gradually increased the dosage of drugs she was giving David, and most damning of all, how Anna had planned to have me committed to a memory care facility where she expected I would have an accident within 6 months. Anna told me that once her mother was in the facility, it would be easy to arrange for her to fall and hit her head, or to have a reaction to medication, Richard testified. "She said elderly people die in those places all the time, and no one asks questions." Anna's attorney was frantically objecting, but the damage was done. Judge Morrison had heard enough. "Mrs. Collins," the judge said, addressing Anna directly, "you are hereby notified that this court is referring this matter to the District Attorney's Office for Criminal Prosecution. Bailiff, please place Anna Collins under arrest." The courtroom erupted as Anna was led away in handcuffs, screaming that this was all a misunderstanding, that I was lying, that everyone was conspiring against her. But as she passed my table, she stopped and looked me directly in the eye for the first time that day. "You think you've won," she hissed, her voice filled with pure hatred. "But I'm your daughter. I'll always be your daughter, and I will never stop fighting to take what's mine." "No," I said quietly, standing to face her. "You stopped being my daughter the day you decided to murder your father. You're nothing to me now." As Anna was led away, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months: peace. The daughter I had raised and loved was gone, replaced by a stranger who had been willing to kill for money. But at least now, she would face justice for what she had done. 3 weeks after Anna's arrest, Detective Santos called me with news that made my blood run cold. "Margaret, we need to talk. The investigation has uncovered something that changes everything we thought we knew about this case." At the police station, Detective Santos led me to a conference room where files and evidence boxes covered every surface. The scope of the investigation had clearly expanded far beyond what any of us had originally imagined. "Margaret, we've been going through Anna's computer and phone records," the detective began. "What we've found suggests that this scheme goes back much further than we thought. We believe Anna has been planning this for at least 7 years. The evidence was staggering. Anna had been researching inheritance law, elder care facilities, and methods of making death appear natural since 2018. She had created detailed spreadsheets calculating the exact value of our assets, and had even researched the most effective dosages of the drugs she eventually used on David. But the discovery that shattered me completely was a series of emails between Anna and someone identified only as MK. The exchanges that revealed Anna had been working with an accomplice we never suspected. "Margaret," Detective Santos said gently, "do you know anyone with the initials MK?" I thought for a moment, then gasped as the realization hit me. Michael Klein. He was David's business partner 20 years ago. They had a falling out, and David bought him out of the company. That's him, the detective confirmed. Michael Klein has been feeding Anna information about your business operations and helping her plan this scheme. The falling out with your husband wasn't really about business disagreements. It was because Michael was embezzling money, and David discovered it. The emails revealed a conspiracy that had been years in the making. Michael had approached Anna when she was 25, filling her head with lies about how David had stolen his rightful share of the company. He had convinced her that everything David had built should have been partially his, and therefore partially hers by right. "Look at this," Detective Santos said, showing me a particularly damning email from 3 years ago. In it, Michael had written, "Your father destroyed my life when he kicked me out of the company. Now it's time for payback, but we have to be patient and smart about this. The old man has to appear to die naturally, and your mother needs to seem incompetent. If we do this right, we'll split everything 50-50, and David will never know what hit him." Anna had responded, "I've been researching the drugs. Small doses over time will make him seem like he's developing dementia. Mom already worries about her own memory because of what happened to her mother. It shouldn't be hard to convince everyone that she's declining too." The cold calculation in my daughter's words made me physically ill, but there was worse to come. "Margaret, we found evidence that Michael Klein has been running similar schemes with other families," Detective Santos continued. "He identifies adult children who feel entitled to their parents' wealth, then helps them orchestrate elaborate fraud schemes. We believe he's been involved in at least 6 other cases over the past decade." The scope of the criminal enterprise was breathtaking. Michael had been operating a sophisticated network of financial predators who targeted wealthy, elderly families. He would research the family dynamics, identify the most manipulable adult child, and then spend months or even years grooming them to become willing participants in the systematic destruction of their own families. "How much money are we talking about?" I asked. "Across all the cases we've identified, approximately $23 million, the detective replied. Your family was going to be his biggest score. But the most shocking revelation was yet to come. Detective Santos pulled out a folder marked "Confidential" and opened it carefully. "Margaret, we found something else in Anna's communications that you need to know about. She's been in contact with someone at Sunrise Memory Care, the facility where she was planning to have you committed. The person was Nancy Walsh, the facility's head nurse, who happened to be Richard's aunt. The 3 of them had been planning my death in detail, discussing how to make it appear that I had wandered away from the facility and fallen into the nearby river. They had it all worked out," Detective Santos said grimly. "Anna would visit you regularly to establish a pattern of caring behavior. Then, during one of her visits, she would disable the security cameras in your wing, help you escape from the facility, and stage your death to look like a tragic accident. The emails showed that they had even scouted the location where my body would be found, timing how long it would take for the current to carry me downstream to a spot where the fall damage would be consistent with an accidental death. Reading these plans for my murder, written in my daughter's own words, was like having my heart torn from my chest. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about the systematic destruction of every relationship I had ever valued. But Detective Santos wasn't finished. "There's one more thing, Margaret. We believe Anna may have been responsible for other deaths in Michael Klein's network. We're reopening several cases where elderly parents died under suspicious circumstances after their adult children had been in contact with him." The implications of what she was telling me were staggering. My daughter wasn't just a thief and a would-be murderer. She might be a serial killer who had been practicing on other families before targeting her own. "We need your help," Detective Santos said. "Michael Klein doesn't know we've uncovered his connection to Anna. We want to set up a sting operation to catch him in the act of recruiting another accomplice. The plan they outlined was dangerous, but necessary. I would wear a wire and meet with Michael, pretending to be a confused widow who was vulnerable to manipulation. The goal was to get him to incriminate himself by offering to help me deal with family members who might challenge Anna's right to inherit everything. This is our chance to shut down his entire operation," Detective Santos explained. "But I won't lie to you. If Michael suspects anything, he could become violent. He's killed before, and he won't hesitate to kill again." As I sat in that conference room, surrounded by evidence of my daughter's betrayal and the criminal network she had joined, I felt a cold determination settle over me. Anna and Michael Klein had destroyed my family, murdered my husband, and planned to kill me. But they had made one crucial mistake. They had underestimated the strength of a mother's love and a widow's fury. "When do we start?" I asked. The meeting with Michael Klein was set for a gray Thursday morning at a small cafe in downtown Portland. Detective Santos and her team had spent 3 days preparing me for this encounter, coaching me on how to appear vulnerable while still gathering the evidence we needed to destroy his criminal network. "Remember," Detective Santos said as she fitted the tiny recording device under my blouse, "Michael is a master manipulator. He's going to try to make you feel like he's your only friend, that he understands your pain better than anyone else. Don't let him get into your head." The cafe was nearly empty when I arrived, just a few students with laptops and an elderly man reading a newspaper. Michael Klein looked exactly as I remembered him from 20 years ago, only grayer and more bitter. His eyes held the same cold calculation I had seen in Anna's face during the conservatorship hearing. "Margaret," he said, standing to embrace me with false warmth, "I was so sorry to hear about David. I know we had our differences, but he was a good man." The hypocrisy of his words, knowing what I now knew about his role in David's death, made my stomach turn. But I forced myself to smile and play the role of the grieving widow. "Thank you, Michael. It's been so difficult. Sometimes I feel like I'm losing my mind trying to figure out what David would have wanted me to do with the business." Michael's eyes lit up with predatory interest. "That's exactly what I was hoping we could discuss. Margaret, I've been watching from afar as Anna has tried to help you, and I have to say, I'm concerned about some of the advice you're getting." He ordered coffee for both of us, then leaned forward with the practiced expression of someone who had perfected the art of appearing concerned while planning destruction. "I know Anna is your daughter, and I know you love her," Michael continued. "But I've heard some troubling things about how she's been handling the business affairs. Some people are saying she's been taking advantage of your grief to position herself for a larger inheritance than she deserves." The irony of Michael Klein, the architect of Anna's criminal scheme, pretending to warn me about her was breathtaking. But I played along, widening my eyes with apparent concern. "What do you mean? Anna's just been trying to help me understand the finances." "Margaret, I think Anna has been lying to you about the value of the business," Michael said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "Collins Construction is worth far more than the $8.5 million she's probably told you about. David and I built something special before our disagreement, and there are assets that Anna might not even know about." This was news to me, and for a moment, my surprise was genuine. "What kind of assets?" Michael smiled, the expression of a predator who had just spotted easy prey. "Property investments, overseas accounts, partnerships that David kept very quiet about. I estimate the real value of what he left you is closer to $15 million. Whether this was true or just another manipulation tactic, I couldn't tell. But Michael was clearly building toward something, and I needed to let him get there. "I don't understand," I said, letting my voice shake slightly. "Why wouldn't Anna tell me about this?" "Because she's planning to steal it all," Michael said bluntly. "Margaret, I've seen this before. Adult children who feel entitled to their parents' wealth will do anything to get it. They'll lie, manipulate, even—" He paused dramatically. "Even arrange for their parents to have accidents." The wire under my blouse felt hot against my skin, as Michael essentially confessed to the scheme he had orchestrated with Anna. "Michael, you're scaring me," I said. "Are you saying Anna would hurt me?" "I'm saying that grief makes people do desperate things," Michael replied carefully. "And Anna has been under a lot of financial pressure lately. Did you know she and Richard are nearly $200,000 in debt from their lifestyle? They need your inheritance, Margaret, and they need it soon." This was the opening I had been waiting for. "What should I do? I don't know who to trust anymore." Michael reached across the table and patted my hand with fake sympathy. "You can trust me, Margaret. David may have had his reasons for pushing me out of the business, but I never forgot the friendship we once had. I want to help you protect yourself." "How?" "There are legal steps we can take," Michael said, his voice growing more confident. "Ways to ensure that your assets are protected from Anna's schemes. But we'd need to move quickly and quietly. If Anna suspects that you're taking action to protect yourself, she might decide to accelerate her timeline." The threat was clear, even though Michael was being careful not to say anything too explicitly incriminating. But he wasn't finished. "Margaret, I know this is difficult to hear, but I believe Anna may have been responsible for David's death. The symptoms you described, the confusion, the memory problems, those aren't natural signs of aging. They're signs of poisoning, I gasped, allowing myself to show the shock that any innocent person would feel at such an accusation. That's impossible. Anna loved her father. Did she? Michael asked. Margaret, Anna came to me 6 months before David died. She was asking about inheritance law, about how to have someone declared mentally incompetent. She wanted to know if there were ways to speed up the natural process of aging. Each word out of Michael's mouth was another nail in his coffin. The recording device was capturing everything, building the case that would destroy him and his entire criminal network. What are you suggesting I do? I asked. Michael leaned back, his expression shifting to something that chilled me to the bone. I'm suggesting that we protect you the same way we should have protected David. There are people who specialize in these situations, Margaret. People who can ensure that Anna never gets the chance to hurt you the way she hurt her father. The implications of what he was saying were clear. Michael Klein was offering to have my daughter killed. I don't understand, I stammered, though I understood perfectly. Sometimes, when families become toxic, surgical solutions are necessary, Michael said, his voice taking on a clinical tone that made my skin crawl. Anna has already proven that she's willing to kill for money. The question is, are you willing to kill to protect yourself? I stared at him, letting the full horror of what he was proposing sink in. This man had corrupted my daughter, helped her murder her father, and now he was trying to convince me to become a killer myself. Michael, I said quietly, I think I need some time to process all of this. Of course, he replied, his mask of sympathy sliding back into place. But don't take too long, Margaret. Anna's conservatorship hearing may have failed, but she's not going to give up. And next time, she might not bother with legal proceedings. As I left the cafe, my hands were shaking so badly I could barely start my car. But underneath the fear and revulsion, I felt a deep satisfaction. Michael Klein had just confessed to multiple murders and conspiracy charges, all captured on tape. The network that had destroyed my family was about to come crashing down. That afternoon, Detective Santos played the recording for the district attorney. Within hours, arrest warrants were issued for Michael Klein and 6 other members of his network. The investigation had uncovered a criminal enterprise that had been operating for over a decade, responsible for the deaths of at least 12 elderly people and the theft of more than $30 million. But as I sat in my empty house that evening, I realized that all the justice in the world couldn't bring David back or restore the daughter I had lost. Anna was facing life in prison. Michael Klein would spend his remaining years behind bars, and I was left alone with the ruins of what had once been a loving family. The trial of Anna Collins and Michael Klein became one of the most watched criminal proceedings in Portland's history. The media dubbed it the death inheritance case, and every day brought new revelations about the scope of their criminal network. Anna had hired a team of expensive defense attorneys with money I later learned she had borrowed against the inheritance she never received. They attempted every strategy they could think of, claiming she had been manipulated by Michael Klein, arguing that she was mentally ill, even suggesting that I had fabricated evidence out of grief and spite. But the evidence was overwhelming. Richard's testimony, the security footage, the laboratory results proving David had been poisoned, the recorded conversation with Michael Klein, it all painted a picture of a conspiracy so cold and calculated that even Anna's own attorneys seemed disturbed by what they were defending. Michael Klein's trial revealed the full scope of his criminal enterprise. 12 families across 3 states had been targeted by his network. The pattern was always the same. Identify wealthy, elderly parents with adult children who felt entitled to immediate inheritance. Groom the children to become willing participants in fraud and murder, then systematically drain the family's assets while making the deaths appear natural. The financial impact was staggering. Over the course of 15 years, Michael Klein's network had stolen $37.5 million from families like mine. But the human cost was even higher. 15 elderly people had died as a result of their schemes, including my beloved David. During Anna's trial, I was required to testify about the poisoning, the theft, and the years of manipulation leading up to David's death. Sitting in that witness stand, looking at my daughter across the courtroom, was one of the most difficult things I had ever done. Anna showed no remorse. Even as the evidence mounted against her, even as witness after witness testified about her calculated cruelty, she maintained the same cold expression she had worn since her arrest. When her attorney asked her to express regret for her actions as part of a plea bargain strategy, she refused. "I regret getting caught," she said during her testimony. "I regret trusting people who were weak enough to betray me, but I don't regret fighting for what should have been mine." When asked about David's death, Anna's response chilled everyone in the courtroom. "My father was old and sick. I may have accelerated the inevitable, but he was going to die anyway. At least this way, his death served a purpose." The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. Anna was convicted on all counts: first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit murder, elder abuse, fraud, and theft. The judge sentenced her to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Michael Klein received the same sentence. The other members of their network received terms ranging from 25 years to life, depending on their level of involvement. But the legal victory felt hollow as I sat alone in the house that David and I had built together. The business we had spent our lives creating was in shambles, the scandal had destroyed our reputation, and most of our major contracts had been canceled. I was forced to sell Collins Construction for a fraction of its value just to pay the legal fees and restore the money that Anna had stolen from our clients' accounts. The financial reckoning was harsh but manageable. After paying restitution, legal fees, and settling several civil lawsuits, I was left with approximately $4.2 million of the $12 million estate David had left me. It was enough to live comfortably for the rest of my life, but it represented the destruction of everything we had worked to build. 3 months after the trials ended, I received an unexpected visitor. Dr. Patricia Hoffman was a psychiatrist who specialized in family trauma, and she had been following the case from the beginning. "Mrs. Collins," she said, "I know this is presumptuous, but I've been working with other families who have been victimized by similar schemes. Would you be interested in helping other parents recognize the warning signs of this kind of manipulation?" The idea of turning my tragedy into something that could help others appealed to me. Over the following months, I began speaking at conferences and working with law enforcement agencies to develop educational programs about financial elder abuse. The work gave my life new purpose, but it couldn't fill the void left by David's death and Anna's betrayal. Some evenings, I would sit in our living room and remember the daughter Anna had been before Michael Klein corrupted her. The little girl who used to fall asleep in my lap while I read her stories. The teenager who would call me from college just to hear my voice. Those memories were the cruelest part of the whole experience. The Anna who had murdered her father and planned to kill me wasn't a stranger who had invaded our family. She was the child I had raised and loved, transformed into something monstrous by greed and manipulation. A year after the trials, I received a letter from Anna in prison. I almost threw it away without reading it, but something made me open the envelope. "Mother," it began, "I know you probably never want to hear from me again, but there are things I need you to understand. Michael Klein didn't turn me into something I wasn't. He just showed me who I really was. The truth is, I never loved you or Dad the way I was supposed to. I loved what you could give me, what you represented to my future. When I realized that you were going to live for decades and that Dad might leave everything to charity or spend it all on medical care, I had to take action." The letter continued for 3 pages, detailing her lack of remorse and her belief that she had been justified in her actions. But the final paragraph was what haunted me. "You won, Mother. You destroyed my life and took away my future. But you lost too. You lost your husband, your daughter, and your family legacy. The Collins name will die with you, and everything Dad built will be forgotten. In the end, we both lost everything that mattered." As I finished reading Anna's letter, I realized that she was wrong about one thing. I hadn't lost everything that mattered. I had lost David, and I had lost the daughter I thought I knew. But I had gained something too, the knowledge that I was stronger than I had ever imagined, and the purpose that came from helping other families avoid the destruction that had consumed mine. 2 years after the trials that destroyed my family, I stood before an audience of 200 people at the National Conference on Elder Financial Abuse. The Margaret Collins Foundation, which I had established with $1 million from David's estate, had become one of the leading organizations working to prevent the kind of tragedy that had befallen our family. "My name is Margaret Collins," I began, my voice steady and strong, And I'm here to tell you about the daughter who tried to kill me for money, and how recognizing the warning signs might save your life. The work had given me a purpose I never expected to find. In the past year, our foundation had helped law enforcement agencies identify and prosecute 15 elder abuse cases, potentially saving dozens of elderly people from the fate that David had suffered. The educational programs we developed were being used by police departments across the country, but the personal healing had been slower and more complicated. Therapy helped me process the grief and betrayal, but some wounds never fully healed. I would never again be able to trust unconditionally, never again look at a family gathering without wondering what secrets and resentments might be lurking beneath the surface. The house felt different too. I had redecorated completely, removing every trace of the life David and I had shared, trying to create a space that felt like mine rather than ours. The business was gone, sold to a competitor who had promised to honor David's legacy even if they couldn't keep the Collins name. On quiet evenings, I often thought about the choices that had led to this moment. If David had confronted Anna earlier about the theft, would she have stopped, or would she have simply accelerated her timeline? If we had been more attentive to the warning signs, could we have saved our family? But I had learned that guilt was a luxury I couldn't afford. The reality was that Anna had made her choices, Michael Klein had made his, and I had survived because David had been smart enough to document their crimes and leave me the evidence I needed to fight back. The financial settlement from the civil lawsuits against Michael Klein's network had been substantial. Several of his accomplices had hidden assets that were seized and distributed to victims' families. My final settlement, combined with what remained of David's estate, totaled $6.8 million, enough to live comfortably and fund the foundation's work indefinitely. More importantly, I had discovered that I was capable of rebuilding my life from nothing. At 60 years old, I had started over completely, creating a new identity and a new purpose from the ashes of everything I had lost. Detective Santos, who had become a friend over the course of the investigation, stopped by my office regularly to update me on new cases and developments in elder abuse law enforcement. The techniques we had developed together were being taught to law enforcement agencies nationwide. "Margaret," she said during one of her visits, "I want you to know that the work you're doing has probably saved more lives than we'll ever know. The educational programs, the warning signs checklist, the family intervention protocols, they're making a real difference." But perhaps the most unexpected development was the relationship I had built with the other victims' families. We had formed an informal support network, helping each other navigate the complex emotions that came with being betrayed by our own children. The isolation I had felt immediately after the trials had been replaced by a community of people who understood exactly what I had been through. One of those families was the Hendersons, whose son had worked with Michael Klein to systematically poison and rob them over a 3-year period. Eleanor Henderson, who was 73 and had lost her husband to the scheme, had become particularly close to me. "The hardest part," Eleanor told me during one of our weekly coffee meetings, "isn't the money they stole, or even the fact that they killed our husbands. It's the realization that the children we raised and loved were capable of such cruelty. How do you reconcile that?" It was a question I asked myself every day. The Anna who had murdered David was the same Anna who had once cried when she accidentally stepped on a butterfly, who had spent hours nursing injured birds back to health, who had called me every day during her first year of college because she missed me so much. The answer, I had learned, was that you don't reconcile it. You accept that people are capable of change, that love can be corrupted by greed, and that sometimes the family members who know us best are also the ones most capable of destroying us. Anna was eligible for parole review in 30 years when she would be 62 years old. I would be 88 if I lived to see it. I had already made arrangements in my will to ensure that a team of attorneys would oppose any attempt at parole and that the foundation's work would continue long after my death. But I also knew that I couldn't spend the rest of my life consumed by hatred and revenge. The work with the foundation, the relationships with other survivors, and the simple act of rebuilding my life had taught me that healing was possible, even after the most devastating betrayal. As I stood in my office one evening, looking out at the Portland skyline that David and I had watched being built over the decades, I felt something I hadn't experienced since before his death: peace. Not happiness, that might never fully return, but a sense of purpose and acceptance that allowed me to move forward. The Margaret Collins Foundation would be my legacy, the way I transformed my family's tragedy into something that could protect other families. David's death would not be forgotten, and Anna's crimes would serve as a warning to other parents about the dangers of blind trust and unconditional love. If you've watched this story to the end, I want you to know that it's not just entertainment, it's a warning. Financial elder abuse is one of the fastest-growing crimes in America, and it's often committed by the people we trust most. Pay attention to the warning signs: unexplained financial transactions, sudden changes in legal documents, family members who become overly involved in financial decisions, and especially any attempts to isolate elderly parents from their support networks. Don't let your love for your children blind you to the possibility that they might be capable of terrible things. And if you suspect that you or someone you know is being victimized, don't hesitate to contact law enforcement or organizations like our foundation. The Collins family legacy wasn't the construction company David built or the millions of dollars Anna tried to steal. It was the knowledge that even in our darkest moments, we have the strength to fight back and the power to transform our pain into something that can help others. I hope our story serves as both a warning and an inspiration. Evil exists, even within our own families, but so does the human capacity for resilience, justice, and renewal. Thank you for listening to my story. If this video has moved you, please hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. And I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Tell me where you're watching from and what time it is there. Your support means everything as we work to protect families from the kind of destruction that consumed mine. Remember, trust, but verify. Love, but protect yourself. And never underestimate your own strength to survive and rebuild, no matter how devastating the betrayal. This is Margaret Collins, signing off from Portland, Oregon, where it's now 9:47 p.m. on a Tuesday evening, and where I've learned that sometimes the end of one story is just the beginning of another.